If you've ever cooked pasta or garnished your hummus, you definitely know what olive oil is. Praised all over the world for its versatility and numerous health benefits, olive oil reigns supreme in the world of cooking. But did you ever wonder, how is olive oil made? Turns out, it's not an easy process, and traveling from the leaves of an olive tree to your kitchen counter is a long and difficult journey. It traces its rich roots back thousands of years, with archaeological evidence dating it to around 6,000 years ago. The process, however, has stayed the same for the entire generations of families, passing down the art of creating. Today we're going inside the oil mills, join whole process, through this cruise of history and culture. From olive fruit to oil, we're decoding the full process of creating every drop of this liquid gold. The story, however, began long ago in the sun-drenched landscapes of the Minoan civilization, where archaeologists found evidence of olive cultivation as early as 3000 BCE. Olive oil was their cornerstone of trade, religious offerings, and even personal grooming. While in ancient Egypt, olive oil was prized for its use in cosmetics, skin care, and ceremonial rituals. It was so versatile that it could even be used to anoint bodies, light lamps, or even flavor dishes. To say that olive oil was sacred wouldn't be a stretch. Ancient athletes in Greece didn't just eat olive oil like us, they bathed in it, and the reason why might surprise you. They did it to prepare their bodies for competition, because they had elevated olive oil into a symbol of health, strength, and victory. In households, it was a staple of the diet, a base for medicines, and a medium for preserving other foods. And honestly, it's impressive that they knew these benefits long before we started to acknowledge them scientifically. Word of its popularity escaped these regions, and rather than just remaining an essential but local commodity, it started getting traded on a scale never seen before, fueling both kitchens and commerce. But do you want to know the craziest part? Many groves planted during this era still stand, and their aged trunks are still producing fruit. Olive trees may take 5 to 8 years before their first real harvest, yet once established, they can produce fruit for centuries, like the ones we mentioned above. However, not all olives are destined for the same destiny, and the timing of their harvest determines this. When picked early, they yield a more pungent, peppery oil packed with antioxidants. But when they are left to ripen, the flavor softens, becoming richer and rounder. This is where a common misconception starts to breed. Because if you're like us, you probably know of either green or black olives. But do you want to know a secret here? Those are the same olives. Yes, all olives start as green and turn black when the ripening process is complete. So, no, these aren't two types at all. But that doesn't mean there aren't different olives. Did you know that 1/3 of the world's olive oil production is because of one type of olive? Yes, and it's called picul. Now, if you're like us and wondering why, it's mainly because of their high oil content, making them highly profitable to use. To top it off, pickles also boast a high level of polyphenols, giving it the flavor that we know and love. Now, we really weren't kidding when we mentioned olive oil as being healthy. Because did you know just half a teaspoon a day can largely reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease? It's true, olive oil has been linked to life-altering health benefits. 71% of the total oil content in olive oil is a predominantly fatty acid called oleic acid, and studies suggest that it reduces inflammation. In fact, it may even have positive effects on genes linked to cancer. That's not all because olive oil is loaded with antioxidants. These bad boys fight inflammation and help protect your blood cholesterol from oxidation, which is a plus if you don't want to die from heart disease. They lessen the stress on your central nervous system and mediate the main anti-inflammatory effects. Key among these is a compound called oleocanthal, which seems to work similarly to ibuprofen. Other than this, the relationship between olive oil and stroke risk has been studied extensively, but take this with a grain of salt as the results were mixed. A 2014 review of studies on 841,000 people found that olive oil was the only source of monounsaturated fat, linked with a reduced risk of stroke and heart disease. Another 2024 review found that olive oil may reduce the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease along with cognitive impairment. It may do this by reducing neuroinflammation and oxidative stress. Now you've probably gotten the memo that olive oil is healthy, but a lot of olive oil's benefits are linked to its harvest. Farmers must balance timing, weather, and demand to decide when the harvest begins, often between the colder months like November and January. Harvesting too early makes the oil sharp and grassy, and too late risks it losing its fresh complexity. Each tree's yield varies with its age, care, and the season's conditions. Do you want to take a moment and guess how many olives it takes to create a single liter of olive oil? 4 to 5 kilograms. Every drop is the result of years of growth and weeks of careful tending. But here's a fun fact. Now, each family can harvest up to 8,000 kilos of olives in a single day. Here's how. In the long, hard past, harvesting was done entirely by hand, with olive pickers climbing ladders to pluck fruit or gently rake branches, letting olives fall into baskets or onto cloths spread below. However, in 2025, this process is simply too slow to meet any production quotas. So while many still honor this tradition, they have mostly switched to modern harvesting machines. These do the heavy lifting by clasping the branches or trunks of the trees and deliver powerful, rapid shakes. The vibrations travel through the tree, loosening ripe olives without harming the tree or damaging the fruit. Nets or collection trays catch the falling harvest, which is quickly funneled into crates. From here onwards, the workers pick out the fallen leaves by hand, removing their excess from the nets. Once gathered, the olives are rushed to the mill, often within hours, because the longer they sit, the more their quality declines, and turns out, rotten oil isn't very marketable. From here onwards, the real task begins. At the mill, olives are cleaned to remove leaves, twigs, and any other debris that was collected with them. From here on, they are crushed, yes, including the pits, to create an olive paste. The creation of this paste can be achieved through 3 methods. Number 1 is part of the oldest techniques still in use today: stone grinding and mat pressing, a labor-intensive process that yields less oil than modern systems, but is still deeply cherished for its traditional charm and distinctive flavor. In this method, massive revolving millstones slowly crush the olives into a thick paste. Once a homogeneous mixture is created, the second most important step starts. It's called malaxation, where the paste is slowly mixed, releasing oil droplets in the mixture. The paste is then spread onto circular woven mats and stacked in a neat tower inside a press. Steady pressure is applied from above, making the mats release their precious liquid, which trickles into basins below. However, it's still a blend of oil and water and needs careful separation. Today, the most widespread system used worldwide is the second method, also known as the continuous method. Here, olives enter the mill at one end and finished oil emerges from the other in a seamless flow. The fruit is crushed by a hammer mill into a uniform paste, which is then pumped into a malaxer, a large mixing chamber where gentle warming and slow turning encourage the oil droplets to separate. You've probably figured out why gentle warming is needed, but in case you haven't, it's so that they accidentally end up cooking or burning the oil. This is why it's really important that the temperature is kept below 27 degrees, dubbing it with the title of cold extraction. The third method is called integral, a spin on the continuous version of oil extraction, but with one extra step: the removal of olive stones before extraction. This approach was known in ancient times, but was deeply impractical due to the painstaking manual labor involved in the past. But with the introduction of modern machinery, it has been revived. Isolating only the flesh for processing, producers can influence flavor, reduce bitterness, and create oils with a more delicate profile. All this leads to the arguably most satisfying and important part of the process. However, if this stage gets rushed and messed up, you can end up with a very different tasting product than expected. Extraction. Now, the liquid we get from these processes is a mixture of oil and water, which is where centrifuges come into the picture. They swiftly divide the oil and water and leave us with our liquid gold. But that's not quite where our journey ends, at least for some manufacturers. You see, while the centrifuges have removed most sediment, there's still the filtration process left. Some producers skip this step for a cloudier oil that tastes more bold and fresh. While others filter it to remove any remaining sediment the centrifuges were not able to remove. This makes sure that oil has a longer shelf life and lower chances of going rancid due to any bits of remaining olive flesh in the oil. This filtered version gives a more subtle and softer flavor. But have you ever wondered why some of the world's best olive oils are stored in complete darkness before they're sold? No, it's not an aesthetic choice. It's actually to stop oil degradation. This is exactly why olive oil has green bottles, to avoid the sun's annoying rays. These bottles are meticulously packed and shipped to stores, and after you end up buying them on your next grocery shopping spree, they end up on your kitchen counter. It's absolutely crazy to see that what began with a single olive tree and its fruits led to being a part of the world's history with meals and medicine. Thank you for watching Whole Process. See you next time.